Hello, everyone. Today we will be discussing a woman whose greed was a danger to everyone around her. Amy E. Dugan was born on October 31st, 1873, in Milton, Connecticut. She was number 8 of 10 children. In 1897, Amy married her first husband, James Archer. They welcomed a daughter by the name of Mary in either December of 1897 or 1899. In 1901, the couple started working as living caretakers for an elderly widower named John Seymour. He lived in Windsor, Connecticut, while his remaining family lived across the country in California. John Seymour passed away in 1904. His heirs allowed the Archers to rent the home and use it to run their elderly care home. In 1907, however, the family of John Seymour decided to sell the home. Using their own savings, the Archers purchased another house in the same area and relocated their business there, calling it the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm, or the Archer Home for Elderly People and Chronic Invalids. Both names have been reported, so I included them both. Residents of the care home could pay $7 to $25 per week, or a flat fee of $1,000 to be taken care of for the remainder of their life. These individuals were also strongly encouraged to make Mrs. Archer a beneficiary of their estates, so that after they died, she could more easily manage their finances. Amy Archer was very active in the local Catholic Church. She attended services weekly and also made generous donations. She was seen as an upstanding person in the community. The Archers faced their first legal issues in 1909 when the family of a resident sued them for $5,000. The family claimed that the Archers kept their family member in unsanitary conditions. Another resident complained about his living quarters around the same time and was removed from the home after Amy signed him up to be committed to a mental asylum. James Archer died in 1910, allegedly of natural causes. The official cause of death was said to be Bright's disease. This was a generic term used to describe kidney diseases. However, he had never been diagnosed with kidney ailments during his life. Amy had taken out a life insurance policy on him weeks earlier, and this payout allowed her to keep operating the care home. Amy managed to run the care home all on her own for another 3 years. She did end up remarrying a man by the name of Michael W. Gilligan, who had repeatedly shown interest in investing in her business. A mere 3 months later, on February 20th, 1914, Mr. Gilligan died. His cause of death was determined to be severe indigestion. Surprisingly, even though they had only been married a few months, a will was found leaving all of his possessions to Amy, and nothing was left to his 4 adult sons from a previous marriage. After her first husband died, the death rate at the care home increased significantly. While he was alive, and between the years of 1907 and 1910, only 12 residents died. However, between 1911 and 1916, a whopping 48 residents mysteriously passed away. Among these dead residents was Franklin R. Andrews, the 61-year-old who had been seen gardening at the home just hours before he died. His death was attributed to a gastric ulcer, but his siblings were suspicious. These suspicions grew, and they found past correspondence that Amy had been pressuring him for more money. Later, it was discovered that many of the deceased residents had given Amy a large sum of money just prior to their death. The sister of Franklin Andrews, Miss Nellie Pierce, shared her suspicions with the local district attorney, who promptly ignored them. Nellie was not to be ignored, though, and she took her suspicions to the Hartford Courant newspaper. They ran it as a story titled Murder Factory, which honestly is an attention-grabbing headline. During this same period of time, a female private investigator named Zola Bennett was hired by the Connecticut State Police to go undercover and live in the care home, to collect information and evidence of the poor living conditions, and also to see how Amy was swindling the other residents. Amy was arrested in 1916. The police exhumed the bodies of her first and second husbands and 3 former tenants. All of them tested positive for arsenic or strychnine. She was charged with 5 counts of murder, but 4 counts were dropped before sentencing. June 18, 1917, she was found guilty of the remaining murder count, which happened to be the death of her first husband. She was sentenced to death. Amy appealed and was granted retrial in 1919. She pled not guilty by reason of insanity. She was yet again found guilty, but was sentenced to life in prison. In 1924, she was deemed temporarily insane and transferred to the Connecticut Hospital for the Insane, where she would remain until her natural death in 1962. Her crimes inspired a 1939 dark comedy titled Arsenic and Old Lace. Amy killed because she was driven by greed. She purchased life insurance policies to cover her victims. She would try and convince these victims to include her in their will, or if they refused, she would simply forge the will to say what she wanted. Amy poisoned their meals with arsenic or strychnine and counted on their deaths to be determined to be illness or old age. Sadly, in many cases, she would send the victim to the drugstore to pick up the poison she would later use to murder them. Amy had the victims removed from the home or embalmed right away, claiming she didn't want to upset the other residents. These victims were examined by the town's only medical examiner, who was also employed by Amy as the resident doctor of the care home. Amy would also send flowers and a lovely condolence letter to the family of a victim, and would sometimes even pay for the funeral herself. As the frequency of her kills grew, she began to target younger, healthier people. This change is what prompted increased scrutiny and her eventual arrest. She was a greedy angel of death poisoner and is alleged to have killed more than 60 people.